Welcome everyone to a live stream, and this is When Keeping It Real Goes Wrong, Military Sexual Assault Edition. This subject matter hits home for me. I don't know if you guys know, but I am a military veteran. I served in the military, and I wanted to bring awareness to this happening to females because it's becoming more and more of an issue. And so I wanted to delve into it and discuss it and just bring some awareness to it. Let's put up the disclaimer and then we'll get on our first story. Sexual assault in the United States Armed Forces is an ongoing issue which has received extensive media coverage. A survey was done by the Department of Defense in 2015, and it found that in the past year, 52% of active service members who reported sexual assault and had experienced retaliation in the form of professional, social, and administrative actions or punishments. In addition to the retaliation against the soldiers remaining in active service, many former service members who reported these assaults were forced to leave after being discharged. Reasons given were that they had a personality disorder or that they engaged in misconduct which related to the sexual assault, such as fraternizing. Or before Don't Ask, Don't Tell came about, disclosing that they were homosexual, even though the assault was non-consensual. Incidents have gone as far back as the 1991 tailhook scandal that concerned a branch of the Navy. And then in 1996, it was that Aberdeen scandal. Then in 2003, the U.S. Air Force Academy had a sexual assault scandal. And then from 2009 to 2012, the United States Air Force had a basic training scandal. In an attempt to deal with this problem, the Department of Defense issued the Department of Defense Sexual Assault Response Policy. A provision under the 2004 National Defense Authorization Act required investigation and reporting regarding sexual harassment and assault in the United States military. A report was done and published in the New York Times. This happened back in 2007. During this time, the women that were surveyed experience in the Iraq War showed significant incidences of post-traumatic stress syndrome, resulting from the combination of combat stress and sexual assault. Women veterans have been more subjected to both sexual and physical assault and are more likely to have chronic health issues and significant lower quality of life in terms of their health, more than 10 years after completing active duty. And in one study, women veterans detail how traumatic experiences such as sexual assaults from peers and supervisors and the subsequent lack of support after these incidents contribute to the decision to separate from the military. That's some chilling stuff right there. Now, this first incident happened a couple of months ago, and the story comes out of Fort Bliss.
Now we have a new development in the young soldier found dead in her barracks at Fort Bliss on New Year's Eve. A fellow soldier is expected to be formally charged and face court-martial. Stephanie Ramos joins us with more. Good morning, Stephanie.
Robin, good morning. Asia Graham's family, as you can imagine, is devastated. They say soon after she arrived at Fort Bliss, just a few months after joining the Army, she was assaulted by a fellow soldier who is now facing a military trial. This morning, unanswered questions surrounding the death of 19-year-old Army soldier Asia Graham, found dead inside her barracks at Fort Bliss in Texas on New Year's Eve.
My dad was in the Army. He was a first sergeant, and he had fun. I thought it was something for me.
Graham had previously posted videos on YouTube talking about how excited she was to join the military. But according to Fort Bliss officials, last June, Graham reported to her chain of command that another soldier sexually assaulted her back in December of 2019.
The investigation into her assault took several months. Charges not formally brought against the unnamed soldier until October. 2 months later, she was dead. Army investigators saying foul play is not suspected in her death. Now this morning, that unnamed soldier is facing a full court-martial after being charged with assault.
Can you explain why it's taken so long to bring forward these military charges against her alleged offender?
The military's had a real problem with this. The investigations take too long. The victims aren't kept up to date on the status.
The case comes after the death of Vanessa Guillen last year, a 20-year-old Army specialist murdered after telling her family she was being sexually harassed. The outcry prompting changes in the military's response to such allegations.
Graham's mother tells us the charges against her daughter's alleged assaulter are too late. She doesn't believe her daughter was murdered, but says had her claims been handled better from the start, she could have received the proper mental health counseling before losing her life. Robin.
All right. Stephanie, thank you.
Okay, now we're going to move into our next story, and this concerns Sergeant Morgan Robinson. Let's hear from her mother.
Welcome back to CBS This Morning. For more than a decade, the Pentagon has vowed to eradicate sexual assault from its ranks. But in our year-and-a-half investigation, service members and their families told CBS News the military has fallen short. This morning, we are focusing on the case of Army Staff Sergeant Morgan Robinson. Her mother says the military's handling of her daughter's assault ultimately led to her death. She spoke with CBS Evening News anchor Norah O'Donnell as part of her exclusive investigation.
Morgan Robinson knew from a young age she wanted to join the military.
When she turned 21, she said, "Mom, I got to talk to you." And she told me then that she had joined.
She'd been in the Army National Guard 6 years when she was sent on her first deployment to Kuwait in 2016.
What happened to Morgan while she was serving abroad?
When she was in Kuwait, she was sexually assaulted and continually harassed by one of her superiors.
Did she report it?
Yes, she reported it.
What was the response when she reported it?
Nothing. She got nothing.
While on that same deployment, Morgan was sent to Afghanistan, where she was sexually assaulted again. An alleged gang rape involving multiple fellow soldiers.
Do you think she was afraid to report what happened in Afghanistan?
Yes, ma'am. She was very scared.
Why do you think she was afraid to report those rapes?
Because they threatened her, number one. And number two, she knew that it wouldn't go anywhere. Nothing happened in Kuwait with the sexual assault and the harassment. So why would they do something, in Afghanistan?
In April 2018, then Secretary of Defense James Mattis said there was zero tolerance.
While battlefield casualties are a reality of war, we will accept no casualties due to sexual assault in our military family.
4 months later, Morgan died by suicide.
You pray that that's not how it's going to end up. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when.
The Army launched an investigation into her death.
I tried to take a look at the copy of the investigation that you got. Here it is.
Yes, that's it. That's what
I don't get
said.
it. It's
Yes.
just blank page after blank page.
Yes.
They gave you this?
Yes.
They gave you 100 copies of blacked out pages?
Yes. I just didn't understand how they could actually stand there, look me in the eyes, and hand that to me.
Does it make you believe they're trying to cover something up?
Of course.
At the time, a principal policy advisor to the military sexual assault program reaffirmed the Pentagon's commitment to hold itself accountable.
The department remains committed to our goals of ending sexual assault in the military, providing the highest quality response to service members, and holding offenders appropriately accountable.
But what Debbie found in the unredacted pages of the report into Morgan's death told a much different story.
The investigation into her death says Sergeant Robinson suffered sexual, physical, and psychological trauma while deployed. The sequelae of this trauma was a factor in her death.
Yes.
So they acknowledge it.
Yes.
In your opinion, what led to your daughter's death?
The military, the way they did not handle what happened.
What needs to change?
they can't police themselves. How can you investigate yourself? You can't.
8 months after Morgan's death, her command issued the officer who assaulted her in Kuwait a written reprimand.
If I was a commanding officer and if I had kids, what would you think if that happened to your daughter or your son? What would you want to happen to them?
Justice.
Are they just going to sit back and it's okay? They would want justice also. Everything just plays over and over and over in your head, thinking, did I miss something? Could I have done something? You know, you're a mom. That's what you're there for, is to protect your kids. And I couldn't protect her.
The Army declined our request for an on-camera interview, but said in a statement they conducted a full investigation and took appropriate action against the reported perpetrator.
What do you want people to know about what happened to your daughter?
To know that she was doing a job that she loved. It was for her country. And to think that that's what took her life. That's what broke her. They wanted her body, and they took her soul.
Think about that. They took her soul, according to her mother. Now, the Army told us that their thoughts and prayers go out to the family and friends of Staff Sergeant Morgan Robinson. Gail, they say they're committed to stopping sexual assault and supporting victims, but there are still so many questions left out there.
I'll say those stories tell another thing. I can only think of the desperation and fear that Morgan must have been feeling. Do you know any of the additional details of what happened to her?
Yeah, I mean, her mother tells us that she did not report that assault, that alleged gang rape in Afghanistan because she was terrified. She was terrified after what had happened in Kuwait, when no one would believe her, when nothing happened. And the numbers back that up. I mean, the military does studies on this. And one of the military studies says that 64% of women who reported an assault say they were retaliated against after. So you think the right thing to do is, you know what, let me report this. Let's hold this perpetrator accountable. And then what happens to the victim? They're retaliated against. They're harassed again. And that's why we really wanted to tell the story of Morgan Robinson and others, Nicole Burnham last night, because these women who volunteered to serve our country are then retaliated against for doing the right thing by reporting these criminals, alleged criminals, and then they end up being severely traumatized and died by suicide.
I thought Morgan's mom raised a good point. How do you police yourself? How do you come up with an investigation when you're the ones who are in charge of the investigation? I know you and your team have been working on this for a long time. Kudos to your team, by the way. What else do you have coming up?
Yeah, it's a good point. And the producers on this part of our CBS News investigative team have spent so much time digging through all those papers, that what I held up to show you, the reports that are just blacked out and redacted. That's part of this investigative work that goes on and sort of trying to tell the story here. Gail, you hit the nail on the head. Can the military police themselves? That's the question. That really is the question. Is this a cultural problem that exists in the military, or is it a systemic problem where you can't report the chain of command because it's not working? Does there need to be an independent outside body that deals with these reports of sexual assault so they can handle it independently and objectively? And certainly that's been the discussion in Congress. Congress is going to focus on sexual assault and harassment and abuse in the military because of the I Am Vanessa Guillen Act. Yeah. You remember Vanessa Guillen from Fort Hood, and many people do know how she was so brutally murdered. So there's a spotlight being focused on this, and the question is whether there should now be a Me Too movement in the military.
Yeah, well, listen, whether it's systemic or cultural, what we do know, it's a problem, and they need to do something about it. Thank you, Nora.
Thank you, Gail.
Something tells me things will change after this. Thanks a lot. CBS News 4-part investigation.
We turn now to our exclusive CBS News investigation into sexual assault in the military. November is Veterans Month, when we honor the men and women who protect this country. But who is protecting them? Tonight, as part of our year-and-a-half-long investigation, we speak to the parents of a soldier who say military leaders failed their daughter, that those failures ultimately led to her death.
I still cry every day. My mind's always on Nicole. I turn one corner, there she is. I turn another corner, there she is.
Steve and Stacy Burnham say their daughter, Army Private Second Class Nicole Burnham, was sexually assaulted in June of 2017 within 2 months of arriving at Camp Casey in South Korea.
There was an incident involving multiple male soldiers. We know that she was held down against her will. We know that there were pictures taken.
2 months later, she was sexually assaulted a second time. Nicole requested an expedited transfer back to the United States, far away from her assailant.
It took them 82 days to get her out of South Korea. I don't know what part of expedited is 82 days. And I would say, who is there to help you? There has to be somebody you can go to. No, there's nobody here, Mom. Please stop asking.
While Nicole was waiting in South Korea for nearly 3 months to transfer, she faced harassment for reporting her assaults. Official witness statements say Nicole was called a whore, slut, and deserving of rape, and that the verbal harassment led to feelings of ostracism and self-isolation.
The Army can deploy thousands and thousands of troops during a war situation within 24 hours, and they can't expedite our daughter off a base after 2 sexual assaults.
Unable to leave South Korea, Nicole became suicidal. Her direct supervisor knew but failed to report her suicidal ideation up the chain of command, even though it was a mandatory reporting requirement.
How do you think she felt about how the military responded to her when she reported these assaults?
I'm sure she was scared to death. I'm assuming, like, this is not what I expected. I signed on the dotted line to serve and protect my country. And who is here to help me and protect me?
A few weeks before Christmas, Steve and Stacy welcomed their daughter home.
Even at home, when she came home, in her bedroom, she locked the door and pushed a dresser up against it. And it was like, Nicole, you're home. She's like, you don't understand.
2 weeks later, Nicole had to report to her new assignment in Colorado.
When Nicole got to Fort Carson, did her command know that she had been a victim of sexual assault?
No, that was not communicated to them.
And it was supposed to have been communicated.
Yes.
Again, just another complete failure of the Army.
A month after Nicole arrived at her new base, she got a call from Camp Casey.
She'd gotten that call, like, you may have to go back to Korea and testify.
I don't think she could do it. I don't think she wanted to do it.
The next morning, Nicole was found dead in her barracks room. She died by suicide.
We have a report from the military, and the very last paragraph says that they didn't think she was mentally sound at the time of her death due to multiple sexual assaults and systemic harassment over a substantial period of time.
According to the military.
According to the military, they knew this, and they did nothing until they sent us home a flag-draped coffin.
We are all thinking about the Burnhams and thank them for sharing Nicole's story. The Army declined our request for an interview, but they said in a statement that their thoughts and prayers go out to the Burnham family. They say the Army's Criminal Investigation Command conducted a full investigation into Nicole Burnham's case and took appropriate action against the reported perpetrator. Our 4-part investigative series on sexual assault in the military continues tomorrow. I'll be on CBS this morning at 7 a.m. And then tomorrow night on the evening news, you'll hear from survivors in their own words.
Okay. Please let me know how you guys feel about this. I hope that you enjoyed this live stream. There are so many more untold stories. So many female and male, because men get sexually assaulted too, stories that may never be told just out of complete sheer fear. And I just wanted to bring awareness. All right, guys, tune in tomorrow. Like I said, we'll be doing another episode of When Keeping It Real Goes Wrong. And then on Sunday, we'll do our Unsolved Missing and a Broken Justice System. Thank you so much for tuning in.